What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Stand Up Guys podcast, episode 162. I am your host, the incomparable Zach Jones, joined as always by the Ninth Wonder, Chocolate Thunder, looking for a few good peepees for a few good DPs, the tag teaming, double creaming. You take the front, he'll take the back. You'll be dancing all night, sack to sack. The phenomenal AJ Singh.
Woo! What's up, everybody?
Hey, AJ, just a little would you rather off the top related to that. Would you rather have a threesome with a hot chick but another guy? Like, you don't have to touch the guy as long as you're careful, but it's that sort of three-way.
Mhm.
Or you can have yourself and two other women, but the women are like, Kathy Bates and Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, man. Those are the women?
Those are the women.
I gotta go with the hot chick. I'll just keep my distance from the dude.
You just gotta do the other half of the wobbly H. Be careful. All right, guys. Well, for people who are just listening on the audio feeds instead of watching on YouTube, we are trying for the first time a remote podcast. So if you do notice a little any degradation in the video or audio quality, please let us know, and I'll try to do my best. Now, AJ, I'm going to tell on myself to the audience because we actually did attempt to record this yesterday, and stupidly, I had the output settings on my microphone wrong, and so my audio ended up just being complete trash, unusable. And so we had to ditch the episode, which is a shame because I'm going to tell you there was some solid gold there. This is like have you ever heard that Tenacious D song Tribute, where like the whole song's telling the story of how like they were confronted by like the devil and they had to sing him a song, and they sang him the greatest song ever, but the actual song they're singing is just a tribute to that song because they couldn't remember it. Well, this podcast is a tribute to the greatest podcast in the world, the one we lost, the one lost to time.
We got this.
But, AJ, the reason we kind of switched to this format is because we have been doing a lot of television reviews. And I think with this setup, it'll allow us to turn out these reviews in a much timelier fashion, which will be good for us and the audience. Because who wants to wait, too long? Of course, this episode notwithstanding, because speaking of which, we will be doing a review of Ahsoka episode 7 today. But I think later on this week, we'll be able to turn out, reviews for final episode 8, season finale, as well as the season premiere of Loki. So exciting week television-wise. Let's see. With that out of the way, and I just want to say, like, this review, it's taking a little longer, but guys, this is going to be an in-depth, scene-by-scene review and analysis of Ahsoka episode 7. So hopefully you will appreciate that. So AJ, should we get into it and review episode 7 of Ahsoka?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So this episode is entitled Dreams and Madness. And right off the bat, AJ, is that a misleading title? Were there any references to dreams and or madness during this episode?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like most of the other titles had some sort of relevance, but I just saw that title and I'm like, was there even any like a line of dialogue or anything that would have related to that? And I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either.
My general thoughts on this episode going into it, before we break it down, is I was happy to see that we did get more action. There's a pretty lengthy action scene towards the end of the episode, which I enjoyed. And then, we got more of both Thrawn and Ezra. I'm still mixed on Thrawn, though. And we talked about this during the last episode, which is he has some dialogue during this episode that, he's supposed to come off as this master strategy guy. But I feel like some of his dialogue is like kind of obvious things that anybody on the bad guy side would have came up with. And
Yeah.
then he also at one point does a weird order, and he's like, "Oh, because basically we're going to play the long game, and this will work out better." And then a few minutes later, basically goes back on that and seemingly again does what anybody would do. So we'll get into it, but I just thought he came off as not like the smartest guy in the world that they want us to believe he is.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's get into this. So we start off with Hera being on trial in front of all like the senators and military officials for disobeying her orders. Mon Mothma, who is I guess like the head judge or senator of this whole thing, tries to defend Hera by pointing out that the things she's discovered on Cetos do seem to be a cause for alarm. The opposing senator, Senator Ziano, again, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his name, but it's something like that. It starts with an X.
I think it's right.
Okay.
Or
He said that her report reads like a fairy tale and that there's no proof of any Imperial remnants. Carson, who is like her main pilot who is backing her up, he chimes up and he references the Mandalorian. So I know you're starting to watch the Mandalorian now, AJ.
Yeah.
And have you got Grand Moff or Moff Gideon, I guess, that character played by the guy from Breaking Bad, Carlos
Oh no, not yet.
Esposito or what? I forget. I'm blanking on his name. Great actor.
Giancarlo
yeah,
Esposito, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So he ends up kind of being the main villain of the Mandalorian series,
Okay.
and so Carson kind of references like what about what's happened on Mandalore with Moff Gideon, but that opposing senator basically says, well, Moff Gideon was working alone on his own, and there's no proof of a larger conspiracy going on. So I didn't draw too much from that, other than it is at least for the first time, seemingly in Ahsoka, acknowledging like that this is kind of a shared world and a shared narrative between these, different properties. So we got basically Ahsoka, the Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett, all in the same time period. Oh, we got a guest star, it looks like.
Yeah, I told him not to come in here. I told him not to interrupt.
That's all right. Kids are kids, But yeah, we at least got, we're kind of seeing this bigger picture. And I believe the plan is eventually, I don't know exactly when, but I think the plan is eventually to do a movie that kind of, ties in all the characters from these series.
That'd be good to see. I kind of like that whole, I guess, Marvel type approach, like putting it all together at some other phase.
Yeah.
And, I kind of do see some like similarities to Marvel in this show, like the way they slowly tell they build up the universe at first, and then at the end they kind of have the action and they reveal everything at like basically the last episode.
Right.
It does kind of feel like it's in line with Marvel.
Yeah, I think they're definitely trying to capitalize off their success with Marvel, and you're probably right. It seems like they're doing that thing where we build up. It's like instead of individual movies, it's like a season of a series. But yeah, I can totally see that where they build it up and then eventually do like their Avenger style movie that's going to have all these characters in it, which I think will be fun. I think I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
So back to the story. Harris says the opposing senator is unwilling to see the threat posed by Thrawn returning, and he says that all he sees is a general abusing her authority. So the senator recommends that Hera be court-martialed. Right at that moment, C-3PO guest stars. He interrupts and he speaks on behalf of Leia. C-3PO wants to introduce a data transcript from Leia, and of course the opposing senator objects. He says the transcript shows that Leia ordered Hera's mission to Cetos. Mon Mothma Mon Mothma tells Senator Ziano that this evidence settles the matter, and so he just kind of has to accept that. Um, Now, I think you and I talked about this a little bit on the last episode as well. Um, it that Senator Ziano, he's almost certainly like some sort of like imperial sympathizer, right?
Yeah, he's got to be. He's got to be either a sympathizer or paid off by the Imperial forces or something. But I mean, it's too obvious. He's working for the other guys.
I mean, I guess potentially they could swerve us and it just be like, oh, this is just one of those guys that's really by the book, and he won't, you know, doesn't have any gray area. He's willing, something like that. But I don't think. I think we'll find out he's a bad guy.
I do kind of have my suspicions. Like, I have suspicions about Mon Mothma. Maybe she's pretending to be a friend, but she's really like working with you. But I don't know her whole history, so.
No, I don't think so, because like she's been too ingrained in Star Wars throughout time.
Okay.
Like, yeah, so she's solidly on the good guys team. And she makes appearances. Uh, I think I might be wrong about this, but I think a version of her was like in the original Star Wars movies. But she's also been in animated form in Rebels, and if you watch Andor, which is a great series, she's really takes kind of one of the lead roles in that series. So, okay, so yeah, Mon Mothma basically walks up to Hera and she's like, "Hey, I know that was BS. Like, I know Leia's covering for you, but she's seemingly okay with that." She asks Hera how real the threat of Thrawn returning is, and Hera says they need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So now we cut over to Ahsoka. So Ahsoka is practicing her lightsaber fighting while listening to a recording of Anakin. Ahsoka tells Hu Yang that Anakin made 20 recordings, and this was the last one he ever recorded. Again, I don't remember exactly what he said. I think just encouraging stuff that like she was a good student.
Practice this stuff more than I do. Just teacher stuff.
Right. She does tell Hu Yang that he was a good master. So then Hu Yang says that the space.
I think she says that because remember in that last episode, Baylan, like in the last episode 2 episodes ago, I don't know which one, but Baylan says that her master failed her. And I think she's kind of trying to convince herself that he didn't. Like, he was a good master.
Yeah, they definitely have a complicated relationship. And, that flashback episode 2, or that one where like she went back to when she was a child in the Clone Wars, and they had their conversation there. I think she definitely like has some sort of respect for Anakin, and she's just dismayed at what happened with him, which is understandable. So yeah, Hu Yang says that the space whales might be closing to their destination because it seems like their speed is decreasing. So Ahsoka and Hu Yang, they get in the spaceship and get ready. Ahsoka says that as soon as they drop out of hyperspace, they need to find Sabine. Hu Yang asks how she's going to accomplish that, and she says, "Easy. The enemies took her, so we'll find the enemies and they'll be there." And Hu Yang is like, that sounds like a terrible idea. They try for a little bit of humor there, a little bit of levity.
Yeah.
But anyway, they do drop out of hyperspace and immediately realize that the Purgle are in the middle of an Imperial minefield. And the Empire, they spared no expense on this minefield. There was a lot of mines in this minefield, man.
Yeah, I mean, how did they get those mines? How did they get them with them? Like, they must have been packing them somewhere. Like, inside that giant ship, there's just a whole bunker full of mines or something? Like, thousands of them?
It is a good question because you figure they wouldn't have just been on that planet, that they would have had to been like in the Star Destroyer that was taken there,
Yeah.
And so it is kind of like, boy, that thing held a lot of mines.
Yeah, and luckily it didn't blow up with inside of it. those Purgles are tanks, by the way. They didn't take any damage. No HP lost on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So yeah, they end up they're flying, and the people are just like blazing through these things, and like he thinks like it says, "Hey, the at least the Purgle are providing us cover." And as soon as he says that, they basically are like, "No, we've had enough of this," and they zip away. But like you were saying, they seemingly took no damage from these things. Like, I mean, these mines are seemingly would be enough to blow up a spacecraft, but they're just like hitting these whales and like doing nothing. They're just like mildly irritated, I guess. So like, okay, we'll get out of here.
Yeah, they left because of the annoyance.
That's what it seemed like. I'm like, this should be adding a bunch more bones to the graveyard, you would think. Sure, yeah. But no, man, they're built tough. So Ahsoka and Hu Yang, they're navigating through the minefield. But then several fighters are dispatched from that Eye of Sion to pursue them. So Ahsoka ends up flying into a debris field. Basically, the debris field is all those bones from the dead Purgle. Which again, I would think it would be too cold for them to rot and go down to just bones. But I guess maybe that debris field is like close enough to the planet that it like is warmed up. I don't know. It seems like they're still in space though, so I don't know if it makes much sense. But yeah, at least one of those fighters explodes trying to chase them into the debris field, but all the other ones, lose them. So Enoch tells Thrawn the Jedi spaceship came through the breach, and he says it would seem that Ahsoka Tano is alive after all. And I believe you and
automatically knows.
Yeah,
he automatically knows Ahsoka.
I mean, we knew from the last episode that he had that line of dialogue, like where he's like, maybe she didn't die, and you better get information on her. But I'm like, just the fact that he's like instantly, oh, it's definitely her. Yeah, I thought that was another thing where like, for a guy that's supposed to be, well, I guess he's all knowing. He's so smart, but yeah, he shouldn't have known that immediately. Anyway, Morgan gives Thrawn the info they have on her. And he does note that he finds it interesting that Anakin was her master. And I think you mentioned this to me before. Like there's some sort of line of dialogue where he's like, she might be, more dangerous. Like maybe we should like be careful or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, he tells Enoch to have the fighters back off. So Morgan tells Thrawn he should continue to pursue her. But he said it would be a waste of resources. He says it's better to put her on a path of her own, choosing so that no matter what direction she takes, there'll always be one step ahead of her. So this is what I kind of had issue with. If by this dialogue he meant they were going to do to her what he did to Sabine in the last episode, where like, okay, let's let her think she escaped, and we'll follow her from a distance and then attack her. I would be like, okay, but we're going to find out here in a little bit that like as soon as she comes out of that debris field, he immediately just sends the fighters back on her and it's like, no, take her out. So
like, find her again.
Right. So seemingly it's a contradiction to me of like, it didn't really make sense what he just said here, because that's not exactly what he does, Mm-hmm. So now we're back to the ship. Hu Yang asks Ahsoka how the enemy was prepared for their arrival, and Ahsoka surmises that it was an attack by Thrawn. So just how Thrawn was immediately like, oh, it's Ahsoka. Ahsoka's immediately like, it's Thrawn. Although she has more reason to believe that because she knows Thrawn was taken to this planet. But also, I guess she could be like, well, it was so tactical to put all the minefields exactly, in the way of the Purgle. That does sound like a Thrawn move. So I'm a little more forgiving of that assumption by her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she probably knows that Thrawn has his forces or some resources still left over, maybe.
Yeah. So Hu Yang says he will run a scan to see if he can find Sabine. So now we move down to the ground, a scene with Ezra and Sabine. So they're traveling with the Noti creatures. I wrote on some sort of weird bug mobiles.
Yeah.
They're like, they look like, bug
Those roly
shapes.
polies, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they do eventually. He just referred to them as pods,
Mhm.
but and but yeah, just like the speeder bikes, they hover off the ground, which is cool. I wish we had that technology.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, I think people get in wrecks all the time. I don't know how you would prevent that, but just to be able to like, no friction from the ground and you're just like moving, man.
Yeah, no wear and tear on your tires and stuff. You don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah, don't have to buy tires. You don't have to worry about like poor road conditions,
Yeah.
ice and stuff.
Mhm. I do wonder though, like, if there's a pothole, does it dip down towards the pothole or does it like stay above it?
That's actually good. You know what? I've thought about that before too, and my theory is it would dip down because
Ah,
like, well, I don't know for sure, but like you figure it's got this gravity propulsion thing where it's like keeping it like a set distance off the ground. So
right.
you figure if the ground dips, like you are going to feel that.
Yeah, so you could
So
run into like you can still hit something.
yeah, like it would be interesting to see. I want to see that now. I want to see him hit a pothole, like going fast.
Yeah.
um, so Sabine gets Ezra up to speed to a certain point. She tells him about the end of the Empire and also the rise of the New Republic. He also tells her that Zeb, who is like this friend from the Rebels cartoon, like this big like ape-like creature guy.
Mhm.
He apparently has a job training new recruits. Now, I think he did make in live action a small cameo in one of the more recent episodes of The Mandalorian, but he didn't really do anything. He was just like at a bar or something. I think that was him. Um, and she also tells him that Hera is now the general commanding the fleet. Um, so Sabine also tells him about how Ahsoka took her on as an apprentice, but she keeps being unnecessarily cagey about how she got there and what happened to Ahsoka. This is something I just have a problem with. It's
That's
like
frustrating.
it is like there's no real good reason why she wouldn't have told him this.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. Like the only thing is you could say like maybe she wants to keep his hopes up. Maybe she wants to spare his feelings. But to me, that doesn't make sense. Like they've known each other for a long time, back in the Rebels days, and like they're friends. I would think, and also just strategy wise, like if they want a chance of getting off this planet, like tell them what happened. Tell them that as far as she knows, the only means of them getting off the planet will be Thrawn's spaceship, or the hyper, so they can at least together some sort of plan to maybe get off the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, to me, that's one aspect of this episode I really did not like. I thought it was stupid that she would not have told him.
Yeah, I kind of just generally I hate when characters withhold information like that. Uh I'm not one of those people. I always share information. I think the more minds the better on it, you know. And if you're all working together towards a common goal, you should probably have everybody in on the information. So it just doesn't make sense to me why she wouldn't tell them.
Especially like if it's a life or death scenario, or like we're gonna be stranded on this planet for the rest of our lives type of scenario,
Yeah,
something that dire. Like you're not gonna leave them in the dark on information like that.
right.
So now we get a scene where Balin, Shin, and some nomads are following this convoy of Sabine and Ezra's like from a distance. Looks like they must have hired those nomads they met in the last episode. Now we go to Thrawn. Thrawn asked the Great Mothers, the three witches, to find where Ahsoka is hiding within the whale graveyard. So they dig out once more their like three things that make the lasers and try to pinpoint her location. So now we go back to Ahsoka and Hu Yang. So Hu Yang, he can't find Sabine on his scans. So Ahsoka decides to use the Force to find her. So Ahsoka uses the Force to call out Sabine, and Sabine like seemingly hears her, and Ezra's like, "What is it?" And uh, I don't know, like at that point, if she for sure knows that Ahsoka is alive, or if she just has that feeling. I don't know if it's totally
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah, I feel like she just kind of because she says she has like a familiar feeling, so I think she's just kind of like not sure right there.
So the Great Mothers do track down Ahsoka's location, and you actually mentioned to me on the episode we lost, and I thought this was interesting. I don't know if they explicitly say it or if it's even the case, but like maybe Ahsoka reaching out to Sabine with the Force almost acted like sort of a thing that would have put her on the Great Mother's radar and made it
Yeah.
easier for them to pinpoint her location. I kind of like that theory, actually.
Yeah, I think it feels like because they were doing it around the same time, so it seems
Yeah.
like they were trying to pinpoint her location. She almost acted like a beacon.
And I really do, I've always said like I'm not really a fan of like the whole like witchcraft exists in this world, but the way you described it as like, it's just another application of the Force almost like they're
Yeah.
tapping into the Force in kind of a different way, maybe a darker way, and the interpretation of that is witchcraft, but really it's just like a different manifestation of the Force, people who can use the Force in a different way. I kind of like that idea. um so yeah, they get her location. So Thrawn tells Enoch to open fire on them. So he basically, I think these come from the Eye of Sion, like they start firing large, um, you know, lasers, I guess, towards Ahsoka's location. And she's able to dip and dive, and we get an action scene where she's, flying through the debris and kind of narrowly missing these explosions. But it does force her to have to exit the debris field and go down to the planet. And so as soon as she does, Thrawn tells Enoch to have the fighters re-engage her. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, what was he talking about? Like, oh, let her follow her own way, and we'll be a step ahead of her. It's like then he just like actively snuffed her out using his resources, and then is like, okay, let's use our resources right again and go right on her to try to kill her. So you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like it lined up with what he was saying earlier.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense unless like he was trying to get his forces to avoid the asteroid field, but they still had to go through them anyway eventually, right, to get to her.
I think the one died and then the others backed off.
Mm-hmm.
Or he had him back off. So yeah, maybe that's more what he was referencing. Just he didn't want to like waste those fighter resources because they would have most likely all died in the debris field. I'm not sure. Very
Yeah.
confusing. So the No-T convoy stops when they see Balin and Shin in the distance, and they'll start to turn around and go away from them. So we get a scene with Balin. Balin tells Shin to contact Thrawn, kill Ezra and Sabine, and then take her place in the coming Empire. And she's basically like, wait, what? You're not coming along? Like, you're not going to help, And I found this interesting. So Balin says her ambition drives her in one direction, but his path lies in another. And Balin says he'll give her like one last pearl of wisdom, which is that impatience for victory will guarantee defeat. And so he's kind of putting it out there that he's like, he's playing the long game. But, and I think you and I have talked about this, that his motivation is the thing that's kind of most interesting to us. Because seemingly, like, earlier on in the series, it seemed like, he was telling her, like, oh, yeah, we're going to have more power than we could have ever dreamed of.
Yeah.
But now that he gets to this point, he's like, no, I can see that you want something different than what I want. And so we're going to have to fork of the road here and go in different directions. And so I find that interesting. Just like, did he know all along that he was going to do this? I'm assuming he did, but then why did he talk it up to her as much as he did originally?
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be really good at reading people, so I would think he had read her a while back and figured out what she wants. So it kind of doesn't make sense that now all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I think your priorities are in a different place. Like it doesn't make sense. He's been her teacher this whole time, like yeah, that seems kind of inconsistent.
And also another thing you brought up to me before is, in past episodes, like Shin was very kind of adversarial and skeptical of Morgan and the witches and stuff.
Yeah,
And seemingly like Balin was more willing to go along with them. And so you would think if anybody was more open to not necessarily going along with the plan, it would be Shin more so than
right.
Balin. But
Yeah,
then also we've had scenes of Shin you know saying that she's ready to for more power and stuff like that too. And so it's just it's interesting because I think Balin has had lines of dialogue in this series that make him sound both greedy for power and destruction, but then also still holds somewhat of a respect for Ahsoka and the Jedi. And you're
yeah.
like, what is his motivation exactly?
I
And
mean,
then there
there's
was,
there's there's some line where he says he wants to like go back to the beginning, and that kind of makes me think like he wants to fix something. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
yeah, we had that whole line where he's like, I want to stop this cycle of destruction, where it's war all the time and one side wins and then the other side wins. And I want to put an end to all of it. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I don't know exactly what his plan is. And that's definitely what interests me the most going into the season finale. Um, so Thrawn tells Enoch to send two gunships to assist Balin and Shin with taking down Sabine and Ezra. Um, so now the nomads, this is where the action really ramps up. The nomads are chasing the convoy. Sabine turns around and starts shooting at them, and she takes out some of them. Eventually, one of the Noti's pods is destroyed. So Ezra goes back for him. Ezra's like a good guy, and he's like, "Oh, I can't leave this Noti to die." So they basically have all their pods surround that broken pod to protect him, and basically they're like, okay, we're gonna fight now.
A lot of people don't like Ezra. I get that he was introduced in a weird way, and like I know his interactions with Ren are kind of weird because like he should be pressing her for more information. I feel like, but I do like the way he's portrayed. He's like a puppy dog kind of guy, like a heart of gold sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
and I
I
think
can appreciate that.
that's consistent really with how he was portrayed on Rebels. Although I think early on in Rebels, like he was kind of this like more of like an annoying kid. But I think
Mhm.
that was purposeful so that over the course of the show he could like, grow as a character. So I was okay with that. But
Yeah,
yeah, he really does become, like you said, this kind of puppy dog character that's, you know, tries to tries to do good all the time.
yeah.
So Ezra tells the Noti to hide inside their pods while he handles things. Um, so as Ahsoka's, flying overhead, she sees this, convoy circle and Ezra, Sabine, and everything. Um, and okay, so Ahsoka gets this idea that she's going to have Hu Yang fly the ship low enough to the ground where she can jump out onto the ground. And you and I have talked about this uh, before, where I'm like, I know like she's powerful with the Force, but to jump out of a moving jet and just be like tuck and roll and like I'm fine. Um, that, that seems like a tough thing to do, but I mean, I guess when you're strong with the Force, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give that to the Force. She must have really put in, like, used it there a lot. She must have really, like, focused on, not murdering herself, jumping out of a fighter jet at like God knows how many miles per hour.
The thing is, if she would have used the Force to basically like slow her descent, like maybe like Superman or Iron Man would, then I would be like, okay, but she really does come out of there and just like tucks and rolls and like all fast. Like I'm like, I don't know. I think she might be dead, but apparently not.
Some limb should be falling off of there.
She should have at least like lost one of her like head tentacles or something.
Right? Yeah.
So she does. She tucks and rolls, but as she runs towards the battlefield, she like instantly runs into Balin. She's like, "Are you disappointed to see me?" And he says, "No, I'm not disappointed, but I can't allow you to interfere." And so they begin to fight with their lightsabers. So now back to Sabine and Ezra. So Sabine tries to get Ezra to take back his lightsaber, but he refuses. He says, "Keep it," and that the Force is all he needs. So Ezra and Sabine, they start fighting the nomads, and as far as the nomads go, Ezra's pretty much right. He's just like using martial arts, and he's like
Yeah.
force pushing these guys into the pods and stuff, and he's dominating them. Sabine's also like doing her thing, shooting at him and killing them. So they fight off the nomads, but eventually Shin shows up and she starts fighting Ezra. And I think there's a shot where like she's got her lightsaber coming at him, and he's only got the Force to kind of like push it away.
Yeah.
But then Sabine shows up to help him, so it's briefly looks like it's going to be a 2-on-1 situation. But then they see those 2 gunships full of stormtroopers landing, so they know it's going to be a bigger fight. Back to Balin and Ahsoka, they fight to a standstill. Balin says she cannot defeat him, and she says perhaps not, but she doesn't have to. And right on cue, as she says that, Hu Yang does a flyover, and basically, it's a miracle that Balin, like he gets right out of the way. He's like narrowly avoids like getting shot. I'm like, man, he must be strong with the Force too, because
Right.
I mean, seemingly it should have been donezo for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing they can't lock onto targets with these ships. Like, is that not allowed? You can't lock onto a target.
Well, I mean, it's a good question, because we do see like in like other Star Wars things, like when they're actually dogfighting in space with each other, they can lock onto other spaceships and stuff. So
Yeah.
you would think maybe they would have the technology to, be able to lock onto something on the ground. But and also Hu Yang's a droid, so you think his shooting skills would be pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway, that allows Ahsoka to get away. Okay, yeah, you and I also talked about this. So Thrawn, he's got like this holographic map that kind of shows him where all the stormtroopers are, and kind of like just in like color, like hexagons or whatever, so we can like see them surrounding the battlefield. Which a part of me is like, okay, I can kind of buy that they might have some sort of like receivers in the uniforms of the stormtroopers so he can see that. But then he notices that Balin is not on the battlefield. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
does he have Balin mojacked as well? Like, how does he know? Like even if he does for some reason, like, how does he can see that, oh, this dot on my map that's further away, that's Balin for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know either.
This was like a very convenient thing that I'm like, it doesn't make sense that he would be able to tell this,
Yeah.
Where was it? Okay. So Ezra and Sabine, they get surrounded by stormtroopers, and for a second it looks like they're just going to get blown to bits. But luckily Ahsoka shows up just at the nick of time, And this creates enough of a distraction and breathing room so that Ezra and Sabine can get some distance so that they can fight the stormtroopers. And so, yeah, we get an action scene where Ezra and Sabine, man, they're just going to town, slaughtering stormtroopers. Um, I think Ezra at one point like steals like a gun from one of them and like shoots them. Sabine's shooting them. I think she even uses at one point like she's got those like wrist like launchers or whatever that launch explosives. I think she used those too. Anyway, they just kill a bunch of stormtroopers, wreak havoc on them. Okay, and so once they get the upper hand on the stormtroopers, Thrawn basically calls off the remaining stormtroopers and the fighters that are following Hu Yang. And this I thought was so stupid of him. Like, we're supposed to believe he's so smart, but I truly believe that if he would have just had the fighters, like, if he would like say, "Okay, stormtroopers, get out of the way. Okay, you fighters, forget Hu Yang, and just like do a run and just shoot everything you got." Where Sabine and Ezra and Ahsoka are, like, yeah, they have the Force, but I think they would have been able to kill them all if they would have just done that.
Yeah, I don't. Thrawn is very. He's making bad moves right now.
He talks a strategic game, but then when he actually gives orders, they're not very strategic, seemingly.
The most strategic thing Thrawn ever did was hire a hype man, because so far he's been hyped up so much in this show, but we haven't really seen his brilliance up to this point. So
yeah, I'm hoping that in further seasons and things they can maybe have him do things that are a little more clever and will actually make us go, "Oh, Thrawn, good thinking." Yeah. So Thrawn tells Morgan that these are acceptable losses given the absence of Baylan. Again, kind of a weird line to throw in. Like, does he think that if Baylan was there, like, they would have absolutely won? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. He really counts on Baylan a lot, apparently. Even though at the beginning he was like, he's an acceptable loss too.
Right. Yeah. There was, I don't know if it was this episode or the last episode, but yeah. He does basically say that, yeah, hopefully Shin and Baylan get the job done, but if not, they're expendable.
Yeah.
they're just mercenaries.
Yeah.
So Morgan questions Thrawn, but he says while they were distracted, the cargo transfer is almost complete, and that Ahsoka lost the most precious thing, which is time. And again, I don't think they've ever told what the cargo they're transporting over is. So hopefully we'll find that out next episode.
Yeah. Let's see.
Because didn't Morgan mention something about like taking stuff out of some catacombs or something?
I don't remember that. No.
I want to say in the last episode she mentioned something about catacombs, and I was like, I wonder what that is. So as the remaining stormtroopers retreat, Ahsoka tells Shin to drop her weapon and that she can help her. Shin immediately runs away, and it looks like Sabine is like going to go to like pull an Indiana Jones and just like shoot him. Ahsoka stops her and is like lets her escape.
So this makes me think that there's some other plan for Shin later on. Like I think she becomes a good guy. I don't know that for sure, but I think she's on the fence right now. Maybe like she's been shown some mercy by these guys. I think if she gets betrayed or something by Thrawn, then she's going to go ahead and become a good guy. We'll see. But
it does make me wonder because, I mean, they definitely have more plans for her, it seems. But, it definitely looks like they're setting up a confrontation between Thrawn and Baylan. Mm-hmm. And I do think that if Thrawn were to kill or screw over Baylan in some way, that Shin would maybe at least try to carry out Baylan's wishes, or, maybe at least become an uneasy ally of Ahsoka to help her take down Thrawn. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're right. I think they got some bigger plans for Shin. I don't know if she'll become a straight up good guy, or like I said, like an uneasy ally. But I think they are setting up some bad blood to where I don't think Shin will be on the side of Morgan and Thrawn.
Right.
So that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said we were talking about this yesterday as well. I do, traditionally with Star Wars, it's been like, the good guys that are force sensitive are the Jedi, the bad guys that are force sensitive are the Sith. I do like with Balin and Shin that they're force sensitive, but there's a gray area. There's somewhere in between. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can have these people that are force sensitive, but aren't the Ezras of the world that are just like the Superman. I'm going to always do the right thing kind of thing, or Palpatine that's just like evil for evil's sake, almost, or the manifestation of evil seemingly. So I do like shades of gray in the Force users.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the best villains. I think, like, compared to Thrawn, Balin so far is the most interesting, like, anti-hero, I guess. I don't know, like, bad guy-ish person. So
yeah, we don't really know what he is, and I'm hoping next episode, because he doesn't seem he does. It's true. He definitely isn't a complete good guy. We know that from previous episodes.
right.
But he also keeps throwing out these lines that make you think, well, maybe he has some good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like they always say, the best villains think that they're right.
Yeah.
So now as we wrap up, Ahsoka hugs Ezra and they greet each other. And Ezra, we end with Ezra saying he has a feeling he might be going home after all. So AJ, do you think he'll be going home after all?
Not this season.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Because we know for this story to progress, Thrawn has to get away. He has to get off planet. But I think they're gonna want to give us some sort of cliffhanger, and I think it's gonna be that the good guys are seemingly stuck on this planet.
Yeah.
And so then when we start the next season, it'll be like, okay, do they use the space whales again? Do they find that space between worlds or something? Do they just get lucky and somebody shows up in a spaceship? I think, but I think also next episode we're bound to get some sort of confrontation between Thrawn and Balin, which will be interesting. If a character dies next episode, who do you think it would be?
I think it's got to be Balin.
I mean, he would be my primary guess. Like if they actually were to kill off a character, he seems the most likely. Either him or Shin, but I think he would be more likely than Shin, personally.
Yeah, I think Shin's got a character arc coming.
I do too. I think they're really setting her up for something. And I think if Balin does die, that would really give her motivation.
Yeah.
But, it does seem like within the course of the next episode, they really do have to set up what Balin's plan is, and then we'll see, like, if Thrawn prevents that or something. But I really don't even have a good guess of what his plan is.
Yeah, I have no clue what he's looking for or anything like that. I mean, who knows? But I mean, I'm all in on it. Like, it's the most interesting storyline so far. The intrigue is what captures me, I think.
And also, like, Balin was trying to prevent Ahsoka from rescuing Ezra and Sabine. So seemingly he, his goal was to have them die, it seems like. So, like,
or it could have just been to save Shin. Like, he might have known that, like, oh, well, now if she enters the fight, Shin's done for. So maybe.
That's a good point. Yeah, that is a good point. Although I just took like that scene where like he let Shin go off by herself. It seemed like he kind of like didn't believe that, you know, she was on the same path as him. Like almost like, oh, I see you're not going to be like the person that puts my plan into motion. So like, go find your own way, kind of type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's maybe we'll watch the next episode and be like, well, that didn't make sense at all.
We were way off.
But no, I am generally interested to see the next episode and see how this wraps up. It does seem this always seems to happen with the Marvel shows too, where it gets down to the last episode and we're like, man, can they like, you know, squeeze everything in and make a satisfying conclusion? Which unfortunately, with the last several Marvel shows we watched, I would say they didn't really.
Yeah.
But I think this show has been of a more consistent quality than those Marvel shows, especially those last few that we watched. So I am hopeful that this thing will end on a satisfying note.
Yeah, and plus a lot of those shows are like one season long, so it's like they really need to like resolve everything. And this, I think it's going to be more than one season. I don't know for sure, but
I mean,
seems
I
like
would
it'll be.
assume, yeah, they haven't announced, but seeing as how they're tying in Ahsoka, Boba Fett, and the Mandalorian all together, like I would think they would want to give them, you know, some more seasons, especially if they're eventually building towards that Avengers style movie that's going to have the crossover with them all in it. I would almost certainly think that the idea is to have more Ahsoka going forward. So I would be surprised if they're not doing multiple seasons. But hey, you never know. Maybe
Yeah.
this will just be an Ahsoka miniseries, and then the next one will be like called something else, but maybe have some of the same characters go over. I don't know. But no, I would assume they're going to do another season, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would think so too.
Um, AJ, any final thoughts or predictions you want to throw out there before we wrap this bad boy up?
I'm all on Balin, man. He's my number one character so far. I want to see what he does.
Yeah, same, man. Like, it's a shame that Ray Stevenson passed away, and it'll be interesting to see, like, you know, if his character survives or not. Because I'm assuming if he does survive, they got enough plans for that character that they probably would have to recast. But I guess we'll have to see how things play out. Well, all right, AJ. Hopefully this episode won't be lost to time. Hopefully everything will go to plan. I do want to thank everybody out there for following along. If you will, please subscribe both to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to us in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. Leave us thumbs up, positive reviews. If you are hearing this and you do have any concerns of the video or audio quality, let me know. I'll see if there's anything I can do to sweeten it up a little bit. But yeah, and also if you want, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. And that's going to do it for all of our shenanigans and poppycock this week. Please, please, please tune in again next week. Bye, guys.
Take care.